because that's the latest possible kick that you could get. And again, we'll talk plenty about LSU as the week goes along because they don't look as good as we thought they would to start the season. So you're going to have an opportunity for defense play as well there. But, yeah, going into Baton Rouge, especially at night, being a 7:45 kick, you're definitely going to have your work cut out for you. And hopefully the bye week did some good things for South Carolina, and they come out of the gate swinging.
Well, Tyler's going to get out of here. He's got an appointment he's got to attend to, so I will carry you through again. Brad Crawford set to join us at 12:30 this afternoon. Jamie Bradford at 2:15 later on today. Lot to discuss. What a weekend of college football. We'll try to hit it all and get your opinions as well. Again, 803-404-6100. He's Tyler Head, but he's bouncing out. I'm Bill Gunner. Captain David Dares behind the glass. It is the halftime show. Bill Gunner for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder with First Palmetto Bank. Let me ask you something here as now we are into the month of October, wrapping up 2025. What are you thinking about doing with your home? You think about refinancing, saving a little money? Interest rates are starting to lower. Now's a good time to call Jacob Crowder. Maybe you're thinking about 2026 already and you're thinking about building a home or buying a new home. Well, the first step you need to make is to call and see what products, what interest rates, what loans are available to you. And Jacob Crowder's been servicing the Midlands right here for well over a couple decades and knows exactly what he's doing. He helped me about 5 years ago, and he's ready to help you. Just got to give him a phone call, 803-719-1005. Again, that's 803-719-1005. First Palmetto Bank, locally owned and operated right here in town. So he's got local decision makers for quick and precise underwriting. Call the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder, today. Tell him Bill Gunner sent you. Reaction Monday, sometimes we can be a little dramatic here. Well, on this particular Monday, there is a lot to react to from what occurred across the college football landscape. One of the wildest, most fun weekends that I can remember. You had the incredible weekend of games 2 weekends ago that had Alabama and Georgia. You had Penn State and Oregon. You had other really good games. This weekend, you knew the slate was pretty good. You just didn't know what was going to kind of become of it. You didn't know maybe if we might get a surprise or two. Texas, Florida obviously was going to be interesting. Vanderbilt, Alabama had its own interest. Nobody saw what was coming with Penn State and UCLA. Clemson and North Carolina kind of figured that might get ugly, but not in the manner that it did. So many things from the weekend that we can react to, and I don't even know necessarily where to go. We'll start down in Gainesville. I don't know if this is a referendum on college football where you got Texas, who's number 9 in the country, and goes to Florida, and Florida's on their deathbed, essentially. Billy Napier's pretty much checking out moving companies, trying to figure out his next move in life, and it really wasn't that close. I mean, I had that game on the secondary TV. I had the 2 TVs going on Saturday afternoon for the 3:30 window, and so I was a little more in tune with Alabama, Vanderbilt, but I kept looking over, and it felt like every time I looked over, Arch Manning was holding the ball way too long and was getting sacked. And there's so many things to take away from that particular game. And as I said, is it a referendum on college football where you got Florida, who's down and out, don't expect much from them. We're all kind of just waiting to see who the replacement's going to be for Billy Napier, and yet here they are jumping up and beating Texas. Is that because there's parity, which I think there is in college football? Is that because Texas was just wildly overrated? Very possible. Obviously, Arch Manning, wildly overrated for what he was projected to be at the beginning of the year. But what a game that we got on Saturday down in Gainesville from the standpoint of kind of just changing the narrative, if you will, both of the SEC, because that did change, in my opinion, that changed the narrative a little bit of the SEC. You got Florida, who was kind of closer to the bottom of the conference, beating up on Texas, who I think we all thought maybe was a top 3, maybe 4 team here in the SEC. And Texas is not a college football playoff team. They've got flaws. They've got serious flaws. Arch Manning's got flaws. But I feel like that's, to me, another sign that both in the SEC but across college football, it truly, truly is a week-to-week basis that one team can come out and beat up on the other, and you just never saw it coming. I think Brian Edwards, credit to him, our Vegas insider from Friday, he did have Florida in that game. I think he had the point spread, which was taking Florida plus 5.5 in that game. But the way that game played out, kudos to Billy Napier. That was not only was it a well-played game from Florida, it was actually a decently coached game. And I say decently because, yes, there was still some significant flaws with what Napier did, but he had his team ready, and he pushed the correct buttons. He made the right decisions, whereas Steve Sarkisian in Texas just simply didn't do it. And, again, to me, when you start that conversation about that game, it kind of boils down to, okay, that's who Arch Manning is. Nice quarterback, fine quarterback. There's nothing wrong with him. But obviously, if his last name wasn't Manning, we wouldn't have really been discussing him much at the beginning of the year. And we definitely would be discussing, does Texas need to make a change at the quarterback position now? So I thought that one was really interesting on Saturday. Go over to the other game I had on the television at the time, Alabama and Vanderbilt. And I said this on Friday with Tyler. If that game was close late, Alabama and Vanderbilt, would I find myself starting to pull for Vanderbilt to win? I wasn't pulling for Vanderbilt. I didn't want to see Vanderbilt win early on as the game got started. I want to see Alabama just put them down, knock them out in the Vanderbilt pimp on SEC shorts, get rid of all that. But I wondered out loud on Friday, as that game evolved, would I find myself starting to pull for the underdog, pull for the double-digit underdog in Vanderbilt. And what I want to see them go into Tuscaloosa and put Kalen DeBoer on even more of a hot seat and offset that victory over Georgia. And I got to admit, that's kind of what happened. That's kind of what happened. I was very torn in that game in terms of who I wanted to win and how I wanted to see it play out. Absolutely kind of crazy. And Vanderbilt, the first time I've seen them really, and maybe a lot of us have seen them in 2 years, just kind of spit the bit, right? Like start making turnovers. Diego Pavia came a little bit unglued. Obviously, he got emotional. You had a scene or an incident after the game with some people there on the field. Apparently, Johnny Manziel, by the way, was on the sideline for that thing, wearing a Diego Pavia shirt with number 2 on it, and all kinds of odd things taking place there. But the thing that I really take away from that game is that Alabama is a legit national title contender. And Ty Simpson, last week we kind of did our September Heismans. Ty Simpson is every bit 1A or 1B, whoever you want to mix and match him with, whether it's Dante Moore or whomever. Ty Simpson is every bit the Heisman contender that anybody else is. And we're going to see Alabama here in 2 weeks here in Columbia, and they're starting to pick things up and get it rolling a little bit. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess, but was very, very high on Kalen DeBoer as a coach. I thought he actually, even when Nick Saban was coaching in college football, I thought Kalen DeBoer might actually be the best coach in college football, and certainly he's had some losses at Alabama that would prove that theory to be incorrect at the moment. But you're starting to see his teams or his team turn things around and become the kind of the juggernaut that Alabama, that we're accustomed to, that we've been accustomed to for the last about 20 years in Tuscaloosa. And Saturday, they give up the early touchdown run, was reminiscent of the touchdown run that Vanderbilt had against South Carolina to start the third quarter here in Columbia. They run it off a right tackle and take it about 60-plus yards for the 6 points. But Alabama recovered. Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia kind of, again, as I said, spit the bit in key moments and had a pivotal turnover that would have put them up. They would have gone up at least 10-0, maybe 14-0, and then Alabama just kind of wore them down slowly but surely and ended up pulling away for a victory that if you were out at a corn maze or a pumpkin patch or something, you just looked at the score and you saw, 30-14. Yeah, that's about right. A lot closer than the score indicated, but a fun game to watch. So there was those 2 games taking place. Then you had to find a third TV for whatever was transpiring out in Los Angeles. Nobody saw this coming. UCLA challenging North Carolina for worst team in the Power 4, and all kinds of coaching changes, making a head coaching change, offensive coordinator changes. You got kind of questioned. Nobody's going to those games. If you flipped over at all, to the Rose Bowl and you saw the crowd there was a couple people that accidentally wandered in, probably realized there might be some free food there. I don't know. Very minuscule crowd in the Rose Bowl for UCLA. That program, which I've seen be successful in the past, and it seemed just kind of dead in the water. And here they are. You blink, and they're up 24-7 on Penn State. And for all the jokes we want to make about James Franklin and Penn State and big game James, there he was living up to it. It wasn't even a big game. Just a complete failure on Penn State's part. And you got UCLA and old Nico just shredding them, just absolutely shredding the Penn State defense in the first half. And now you're trying to keep up with Vanderbilt and Alabama. You're trying to keep up with Florida, Texas. And now you've got this huge, huge upset occurring out on the West Coast with an 0-4 team taking on Penn State, who still, despite having one loss, is still considered a national championship contender. And lo and behold, at the very end of that, you got James Franklin trying to explain things, almost excuse-wise. 803-404-6100. Is this an excuse? Is this James Franklin making excuses? Captain Days is cut number 3. Here's James Franklin after the game.
Obviously, we did not handle last week's loss well. We also lost some players in that game. during the week, and then everything else, the travel, everything else. Did not come out with the right energy to start the game, and before you know it, obviously they get a touchdown drive and an onside kick, and now you're fighting. They gain confidence, and we're fighting for the next 3 quarters. So that's my responsibility, and I didn't get it done.
We'll talk more about this. It was such a big weekend. Brad Crawford will join us, CBS Sports. Talk a little with him. You're listening to the Halftime Show. It's 12:35 on a Monday. So much to get into, so much to discuss, and joining me now, Brad Crawford of CBS Sports. And Brad, have you recovered from the weekend? I mean, we knew that this weekend had the potential to be good, but about 3:30 on Saturday or late in the afternoon after 3:30, it really exploded into a phenomenal weekend across college football.
Yeah, Bill, it's hard to believe that here we are at the mid-season point just about, and preseason number 1 and number 2, Texas and Penn State, are unranked. So college football has delivered from a parity standpoint, and honestly, we thought coming in that we might see that this fall.
Is there a biggest surprise to you, whether it's the play of Arch Manning, whether it's what you just said, just in terms of the overall top teams that have fallen, or something else that has occurred? Maybe it's Alabama and the way they're playing now. Is there a biggest surprise to you at this point?
I think locally in the region, Bill, is probably Virginia and Tony Elliott. I mean, that program was essentially left for dead a couple of years ago. Tony Elliott really struggled there to begin as the former Clemson OC, and now to think that Virginia is one of 3 teams in the ACC, unbeaten right now in conference play, with a chance to run the table, it's surprising to me. And then I think nationally, it's definitely Texas. And just the Longhorns are not the team I thought they would be. They were my preseason number 1 because I just assumed all the offseason acquisitions and talent that Sarkisian put around Arch Manning would work. And so far, 4 new offensive linemen have struggled, and Arch Manning, even when he's been protected, has been inconsistent. So Texas and Virginia right now are 2 of my biggest surprises this season.
When you mention that with Texas, is that a testament to what college football is because of what you just said, the transfer portal, trying to put new guys around your existing guys? Is that what we have now with the transfer portal and what college football as a whole is?
I think we're going to see just more parity, man, because of the equal revenue sharing. And I know the Texas roster, back in July, it came out that it was around $40 million. Steve Sarkisian said there's no way we're paying that much for our roster, but it's certainly the highest paid in college football next to Ohio State. But then you have schools like the Indianas who, if Indiana wins 6 of their next 7 games and finishes 11-1 again, they're going back to the playoff for the second straight year, a school like the Hoosiers. So I think it's impressive to see that revenue sharing has evened the playing field somewhat. And then, you have programs like Georgia who maybe aren't signing as many 5-stars to create depth on defense and that sort of thing. So they're not, winning every game by 30 points. So as a college football fan and media person alike, I think it's pretty cool to see all these new faces inside the top 25.
Brad Crawford joining us here for about 10 minutes as we talk big picture college football. We talk Texas, but on the Florida flip side of it, what does Florida do now? Like, it feels like, all right, this is Billy Napier's way of continuing to hold on. Now, obviously, there's plenty of games left. Where do you see Florida going? Where do you see Billy Napier's job status? How is that situation down there?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, man. I'm writing a story now trying to project Florida's, remaining 7 games or so, and is Billy Napier going to be the coach in 2026? I think if you're a Gators fan, if you're ready to move on from this ship, the worst thing that could happen is for Billy Napier to get hot for the second straight year. He's going to College Station this week. Florida's probably going to lose that game. But there's some others down the stretch Florida can win. Mississippi State, Kentucky. Maybe they play well against Georgia and beat a, non-elite Kirby Smart team, I think. So it's just hard for me to say right now. I think if Ole Miss gets to the playoff and maybe Florida struggles in November, you're going to hear cries for Lane Kiffin or possibly Eli Drinkwitz to Gainesville. But there is 5 Power 4 conference jobs open right now. And Arkansas is one in the SEC, probably going to get another or 2. Maybe Mark Stoops leaves Kentucky at year's end. So a lot to be sorted out here in early October.
Alabama this weekend continues to solidify that they are back. They knock off Vanderbilt. What is your take on the Crimson Tide nationally? Are they a top 5 team in your opinion? Are they a top 10 team? Is this just a team that knows how to beat everybody except except teams on the road like Florida State?
Yeah, that was a bad loss to open the year, but no team has played better the last 4 weeks, so to speak, than the Crimson Tide. I think Kalen DeBoer kind of has it together now. I don't think Alabama's a top 5 team. I do have them inside my top 10. I'm kind of taking a week-by-week approach with the Crimson Tide because you consider the remaining schedule, man. They go to Missouri this weekend. They host Tennessee. Got to play LSU. Got to play Oklahoma. Probably going to face Hugh Freeze in his final game in the Iron Bowl. in late November. So there's still several lost opportunities on that schedule, but they protect Ty Simpson. He's playing at a level right now better than any quarterback nationally, maybe not named Dante Moore at Oregon. So I like Alabama's chances to make the playoff here with only one loss as long as they can finish with 10 wins.
Florida State and Miami, you have, if your poll, you got Miami. I didn't see it. I know sometimes you put that stuff out. You got Miami as the number one team in the country right now?
Yeah, man, I've had Miami number one for the last 3 weeks. Really, after that win against USF in week 3, it just showed me that both sides of the football, Miami is elite. You know, I was told over the summer by one of the staffers there at Miami that this is the best offensive line he thinks the program possibly has ever had. And so far, they've shown that. Protecting Carson Beck, they've got a true freshman in Malachi Tony at wide receiver who's one of the best players nationally. He's going to be a household name here in a few weeks after he scored a couple of times against FSU. So Miami's my top team. I think Ohio State's maybe 1B, and then there's considerable drop-off after that.
You think – what was your assessment last year of the college football playoff? I said it dragged on. I don't know how to explain it. By mid-January, I was tired of it. I wasn't thrilled with the games. I feel like as I sit here now on the first full Monday of October, when I look ahead to the college football playoff, I actually get kind of excited because of what you mentioned about parity and the potential for some really fun big games in January in the second or third round.
I was going to say, I love the mid-December first-round setup with 4 home games. I like the quarterfinals at the big bowls, like the Orange Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar. I like all that, but extending the national championship game to late January, like 2 weeks before the NFL finishes its season in the Super Bowl, that's where there's that lull period where, you know, we're like, man, let's get more football and get this thing over with. I think for the most part, man, I can speak for everybody that college football season should end around the new year. And when you have, you know, weeks of open time in mid-January where teams are preparing for semis and final games, it just kind of drags on like you said. But I like this 12-team setup right now. I especially like it because this is going to be the first season, Bill, where we see, you know, the top 12 teams seeded 1 through 12 and not just the conference champions as those top 4 seeds. I think we're going to see maybe 5 SEC teams make it, so should be a pretty exciting final few weeks of the year.
Brad Crawford joining us. About 2 minutes left with him here as he's a busy man, and what a wild week, and I don't even have time to ask about Texas Tech. But real quick, your thoughts. Last now 7 games for Southcon. They go to Baton Rouge this week. Your thoughts on the Gamecocks, the Tigers, and where the Gamecocks are going here?
Yeah, I think the glass half full mindset would be all the goals are still out front of South Carolina. I know it hadn't looked good offensively. I know Mike Shula has struggled a little bit. Offensive line has had its issues, run game. But, man, you look at the schedule. There's still 5 games left against top 15 teams. Gamecocks going to run and get to 10-2, then they're going to be in the playoff because of how brutal this schedule is. I don't think that happens. I think this is more of a 7-5 type finish, possibly 6-6 if things go further awry. But I do think the win over Kentucky maybe is a momentum booster this program needed after those losses to Vandy and Missouri. But, I mean, don't look now. Vandy and Missouri are a combined 10-1, so those are 2 pretty good football teams.
Rank the next 4 quickly. Obviously, LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma, Mississippi. Your opinion, obviously, Mississippi on the road. That's the one that I think is the toughest. But your ranking of the next 4 games from most difficult for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, if you would have asked me this, you know, before the season, I would have said undoubtedly LSU. Now I think Saturday night's game is actually winnable because LSU has not done a good job protecting Garrett Nussmeier. He can't move on that bum knee right now, and LSU has no run game. So I'm expecting a close, ugly game Saturday night at Tiger Stadium. I'm with you. I think the Ole Miss game on the road November 1st is the toughest. Trinidad Chambliss, man, the D2 transfer that Lane Kiffin unearthed. He has been a great addition for the Rebels. And then I'd probably say Oklahoma, because of their defense, is probably the second toughest game. I go Bama, and then, like I said, I think LSU Saturday night is the most winnable game of these next 4.
That's an interesting take there. Brad, always appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. Look forward to catching up with you here again in the next few weeks, and thank you for taking time out to join us.
Good to hear from you and praying for you, buddy.
I appreciate it, buddy. Good to hear from you, too. Brad Crawford of CBS Sports does a phenomenal job. Make sure you check him out on Twitter, and you can conversate with him there. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 1. It is the halftime show. Big thank you again to Brad Crawford for joining us this afternoon. I always enjoy talking with him and getting his perspective, especially on a weekend like this past weekend. It was just that was fun. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it. And maybe you are one of those people that says, man, it was even more fun by the fact that South Carolina didn't have a football game. Maybe if you're a Clemson fan, you said, oh, that was even more fun because we just hammered North Carolina and Bill Belichick, and I was done. You can say if you're a Clemson fan, I was done by 3. Actually, you were pretty much done by 12. Probably about 12:25. You were very comfortable in your own skin if you were a Clemson fan, even with the issues they've had. But yeah, if you were a Clemson fan, maybe that afternoon slate and even the evening slate, you said, "Oh, this is much nicer to relax and enjoy a victory." And that's the beauty of college football. That's what we all tune in for. And you had the massive upset with UCLA over Penn State. You had the intriguing game of Florida and Texas, and several of y'all weighing in on that. Arch Manning, just, I don't want to bang on the kid. That's the easiest thing in the world to do right now, is to go on the radio or to write an article and just bang on Arch Manning. I mean, he's obviously just not living up to the hype right now. But Texter weighed in and said not only did Manning hold the ball too long, but he was late leaving the pocket to escape. Speaking of the upset and James Franklin talking there, we played that audio clip. Another texter says, yeah, that's excuses from him. He has nothing to fall back on. Can't coach, period. He should have just pulled a Marshawn Lynch and said, I'm here, so I won't get fined, because nothing he would say would excuse anything. And I agree with both of those. Those were, I think, those two games over the weekend, I don't know, Penn State was surprising. I don't know if those are the games you say, well, that's the most surprising, but I think they generate the most discussion, because not only do you look at the Penn State-UCLA game and you go, oh, well, that's an upset. I think it generates legitimate questions about James Franklin and Penn State, not just in 2025, but moving forward. Is he the guy to lead that program? I know how the fan base up there is not happy with him. They feel that the rug has been pulled out from under them. I mean, look, UCLA was bad. I mean, let's be honest. They were 0-4, and they were bad. But it's not a matter for Penn State, like a lot of programs now, of winning 9 games, 10 games, going to a bowl game. I think there's merit in going to a bowl game for different reasons, but let's be honest, pretty much for everything, going to a bowl game, if that's your bar for keeping a coach, that's now become irrelevant. Hey, we went to 5 or 6 straight bowl games, 7 straight bowl games. That's become irrelevant in terms of keeping a coach. And James Franklin and Penn State have extremely high expectations. And when you're losing games like that, you can't get over the hump against elite teams like Oregon last week. I don't know. Do they start to self-assess, and think that maybe it's time to find another coach to lead their program? James Franklin could go to 90% of the schools out there, and people would gobble him up, love to have him. Florida probably would. But, what happens with that program? That's what makes that fascinating. Texas and Arch Manning, now you kind of wonder about, I don't want to say his future. You know that he's going to be there. You know he's going to be the starting quarterback. But is it a moment where Steve Sarkisian needs to sit the young man down and let him rest a little bit and kind of reevaluate how he's playing, what he's doing, certain things that he's doing? Where's Texas going over the next several weeks? And then, as I asked Brad Crawford, where's Florida going? It ain't like Florida's schedule lightens up. Gators have an extremely difficult schedule, and that's what makes it even more fun for college football for us, is to continue to watch the Billy Napier story. 803-404-6100. Speaking of Billy Napier, here you go. Let's play this clip real quick, Captain Dave. This is number 1. Billy Napier telling us he's not giving up.
Nowadays in college athletics, maybe there's a little bit of a black eye about the sport, what it can teach, what locker rooms are like. And I can only speak for ours. I'm not giving up on team, and that's a football team. And I'm humbled to be a part of it. And for them to do what they've done over the last couple of weeks, I think is to be commended in today's world, right? They didn't blame anybody else. They took ownership. and they went back to work.
Hour 2 on the way. It's the halftime show. 1 o'clock on a Monday, October the 6th. Bill Gunner, Captain David Ayer, Tyler Head had to slip out for an appointment today. He'll be back tomorrow, and we will recap. We'll continue to recap everything from a wild weekend. I'm just looking at my notes, and it's just what a weekend. And I keep saying that for college football, just the brief notes that I have, just small things that I write down for this, like Penn State / James Franklin, Florida / Billy Napier, Texas / Arch Manning, Alabama / Ty Simpson, Bill Belichick / North Carolina. And I've got is Texas A&M they're quietly becoming one of the best teams in college football, just motoring over people, knocking off Notre Dame and South Bend, taking down Auburn. This past weekend, it was a tight game against Mississippi State, and all of a sudden they exploded and they rolled in that game. Texas A&M, by the way, gets Florida this coming weekend. But just the notes that I have, it was a fun, insane college football weekend. Major League Baseball this weekend. I don't know if it lived up to the hype. The Yankees, thank goodness that I had my wager with Brian Glenn on the Yankees-Red Sox and nobody with Yankees-Blue Jays, because the Blue Jays just blasting the Yankees out of Toronto, and now they go back to New York for that series. But Tyler and I made our picks, and I've got the Blue Jays and the Dodgers in the World Series. I'd have to go back and look. I think my sheet's at the house, actually, with Tyler's pick. But I know he had the Mariners in the World Series. But the Blue Jays just blasting the Yankees. And then you had the other series as well. And the one that stands out to me that I think could be the best of the four is Seattle-Detroit. And that was a really good game last night. Seattle ties that thing up 1-1. With their victory over Detroit. A fun 11-inning game on Saturday evening that was entertaining to watch while you were trying to keep up with college football. The Dodgers over the weekend take a 1-0 advantage over the Phillies. If you missed that, Shohei Ohtani getting the victory there. And again, they'll be back in action at 6 o'clock tonight. And then Chicago, they're back in action later on tonight, but they got blasted in Milwaukee 9-3 Saturday afternoon. So Major League Baseball kind of living up to the hype. The NFL, if you're a South Carolina person, you kind of brag about the NFL this weekend. Spencer Rattler becomes the first Gamecock quarterback to start and get a victory since Anthony Wright in 2005 with the Baltimore Ravens. Spencer, I was running some errands early on, but I wanted to kind of keep track because, no offense to Spencer Rattler or the Saints, but the Saints aren't good, right? The Saints are bad. Not that the Giants are any good either, but that was one of those games where you looked at it and the Saints were favored by 2.5 points, and that's one of those like, okay, Vegas knows something here that maybe we should all pay attention to. And so I was keeping track of it while I was running errands early on, and the Giants jump out to a 14-3 lead. And I was like, well, there goes that for Spencer. Doesn't look like he's going to get his opportunity to pick up a victory. And looked back, it was 14-13, and the next thing you know, it was 26-14. And Spencer Rattler gets his first victory as a NFL starting quarterback. And as I just mentioned again, the first NFL starting quarterback from the University of South Carolina to get a victory since Anthony Wright. And I had to do a little research on that. It was with the Baltimore Ravens in 2005, one of the last years he played. And then that was something special. But if you were watching, and I don't know why you would be watching, but if you were watching the Panthers and the Dolphins, number one, you must have been being punished for something you did either in a previous life or the last few weeks. What an awful game. Actually, it was a good game, but two bad teams. But Rico Dowdle just explodes yesterday. 23 carries, 206 yards for the former Gamecock, and it really got me thinking. He kind of hung around the league. He had a 1,000-yard year last year. Not that means quite the same as it used to, especially in the NFL, but he had a 1,000-yard year for the Cowboys last year and did really well. Couldn't re-sign, so he comes to Carolina, and he has just an absolutely career day, and feels like that'll probably get him another year or two. He's on a 1-year contract with the Panthers, but that kind of day, it feels like somebody's going to be like, okay, I see what you can do there, Chief. Let's bring you in and lock you up for another 2 years. Is Rico Dowdle having the most underrated NFL career of any Gamecock you can think of? He had a good South Carolina football career, but I'll give you a comparison. It wasn't Deebo Samuel. Like, Deebo Samuel had a phenomenal South Carolina career. And yesterday, Deebo Samuel catches a touchdown, 96 yards for him in the Commanders' win over the Chargers, which, again, maybe just me, but I thought that was kind of shocking. They go out to L.A., and they got down 10-0, and then the next thing you know, there was a roughing the punter call on the Chargers. The Chargers actually run the punt back right before the half, got a roughing the punter call, and the whole game turned, and Washington scores 27 unanswered in that ball game. But Deebo Samuel, again, he had a big South Carolina career. You kind of, when he goes to the NFL, you kind of went, all right, kind of expect that from him, expect him to do big things. I don't know if we all saw or thought Rico Dowdle would be the guy out there having a pretty sustained NFL career. And good for him yesterday. But again, Deebo Samuel, another Gamecock yesterday, 8 receptions on the day. I mentioned it, 96 yards and a touchdown. So good for him in Washington. And then you just had other things in the NFL that occurred last night. I know we do this in college all the time. We say, are they back? Are the New England Patriots back? Was last night a sign that they are back? They go into Buffalo last night and knock off the Bills. They give the Bills their first loss of the season. Tyler had asked last week, by the way, who was going to lose first, the Bills or the Eagles. Well, both of them go down. Jay Phillips' Broncos yesterday go into Philadelphia and rally and win that ball game. And then last night, the Patriots go into Buffalo and knock them off in a really, really good game. The Patriots now 3-2 on the season. You had Drake May actually looking like a guy who had been a top 5 quarterback at one point in his life. Are the Patriots back? Are they back? Oh, we'll do that more with the NFL, maybe the Patriots now. But you had that game that was a lot of fun. And then you also had, even though probably nobody here was watching it, what in the world happened out in Arizona where they blow a 21-6 lead? They should have had a touchdown late in the game that would have sealed the deal, but they dropped the ball before crossing the goal line. Tennessee rallies and kicks a field goal with 3 seconds left to win that one 22-21 and give Cam Ward his first victory as a starting quarterback in the NFL. So it's a wild day in the NFL as well. And all of that, college football, Major League Baseball, the NFL, I'm not sure it was the wildest thing that happened this weekend. If you haven't been paying attention, and it looks like there's more information out now, this Mark Sanchez story, it's like a soap opera. You don't know what information, what else is about to come out. Sanchez now is facing more serious charges after prosecutors have reviewed evidence where he attacked a 69-year-old truck driver in Indianapolis. Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears announcing today that his office has upgraded the charges against Mark Sanchez to a level 5 felony of battery, resulting in serious bodily injury. The charge actually comes with a potential sentence of 1 to 6 years in prison. This story on Saturday was one of those things where it comes out on Twitter. I'm watching it on Twitter, and people are offering thoughts and prayers that Mark Sanchez has been stabbed. It looked like he was the victim. It looked like he had been attacked. And then as the day evolved, and now we get here to Monday, he was the aggressor. He was charged yesterday with 3 misdemeanors after he allegedly confronted and attacked this truck driver early Saturday morning. Went to the hospital. Then the backstory on that, if he confronted and attacked the truck driver, and he comes out with stab wounds, not the best work there, Mark Sanchez. But then he gets arrested at the hospital. This story's wild. Where are we going with this one? So what What a wild, wild weekend across the board, whether it was college football, whether it was NFL, whether it was Major League Baseball, and now you have this story coming out on Mark Sanchez as well. 803-404-6100. We'll start to get you ready for South Carolina and LSU. The point spread is out. 10.5 is what the Bayou Bengals are favored by on Saturday night. We'll talk a little bit about that, get back into a little bit of this NFL, roll along here. If you want to be a part of the program today, 803-404-6100. That's how you can join me this afternoon. Tyler Head had to attend an appointment. He'll be back tomorrow. It's Captain Dave and I. We're holding down the fort. You're listening to the Halftime Show. 1:16 on your Monday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great weekend now as we get set for the next string of games for South Carolina coming up this weekend, 7:45 against LSU. And we'll get out to the phone lines here in just a minute, but they have just put out the schedule for the 11th for October. Excuse me, I'm sorry, the 18th. This weekend is the 11th for October 18th. And we already knew this because of the way the SEC does the scheduling. We knew it would be an early game. But South Carolina will either play at noon on ABC, I believe, or 12:45 on the SEC network when they host Oklahoma. The other game that is in contention for that is LSU Vanderbilt. LSU at Vanderbilt on the 18th. My guess, the winner of this weekend's game, South Carolina LSU, gets the ABC slot. The loser gets the SEC network slot. Oklahoma and South Carolina, again, they've put this out. That weekend, South Carolina, Oklahoma will either be at noon or 12:45, either on ABC or on the SEC network. The other game in that's matching up with it is LSU and Vanderbilt. Ole Miss and Georgia on the 18th. That'll be a really good one. It'll be in Athens, 3:30 on ABC. Texas A&M and Arkansas, that'll be at 3:30 on ESPN. Mississippi State at Florida that weekend. It'll be 4:15 on the SEC network. Tennessee, Alabama will be a night game. That game will be in Tuscaloosa. That'll be on ABC on the 18th. Texas at Kentucky will either be on ESPN or the SEC network. And Missouri, Auburn will either be on ESPN or the SEC network. That's your rundown of games. They have just put that out in the last few minutes. So, again, if you're planning ahead, it'll be a nooner. Finally, a nooner. I don't know if a lot of you are excited about that for Oklahoma. We already knew that, given that the SEC puts out those flex dates and everything prior to the start of the season. Let's get out to the phone lines. Ty wants to weigh in on college football. Ty, how you doing, buddy? Hadn't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing well.
How you doing, Bill? You doing all right?
Doing better. We're getting there.
Oh, okay. I didn't know after your second favorite team got beat by us. You know what I'm saying? How about them Canes? We almost gave away a little bit, but, how you doing? You doing all right?
I'm doing good. I'm a little offended that you said Florida State's my second favorite team, but no, I'm doing good. Yeah, your Canes look good. I was skeptical of them, I'll admit. I picked Florida State to win. I had Florida State winning 31-28 in that ball game. Give credit to Mario Cristobal. What that defense, I don't know if it's underrated, but I don't know if people appreciate how good those bookends are.
Yeah, you're right. We got some great ends. Our offensive line's crazy. But what I called in for, let me go ahead and get into it. Yeah. And you made some great points. And you was talking about Spencer Rattler going to the NFL. And before that, you was talking about Arch Manning. My question to you is, what do you think he's going to get drafted? If he has an inconsistent year this year, next year, let's say he come back and he had an okay season, what round or how do you think they're going to treat Arch compared to Spencer Rattler, who actually had two great seasons with South Carolina? They had a lot of reaction to something he said when he was in high school, but it kind of had a rain cloud on his whole career. And compared to Shador as well, that he got drafted so low when he actually played not for the position he got drafted for. What do you think Arch is going to fall? Because to me, it's kind of in the same fear, famous family, football family. He didn't live up to all the hype. They were saying he was getting the Heisman before he even played the snap this year. So I just want to get your opinion on that, and I'll take it offline.
Yeah, I appreciate the phone call, Ty. The name you brought up, it's not Spencer Rattler that's going to be interesting with Arch Manning. Now, unless something kind of goes crazy over the rest of the season in Texas and Oklahoma this weekend, unless something kind of goes crazy, I would assume that Arch Manning is not in a position to go pro. I would assume. Now we know the NFL doesn't always draft on what you actually have done in college. They draft on pro potential. Arch Manning, truthfully, is wildly fascinating, and here's why. And I remember hearing about this during his recruitment, and it was kind of taboo to say anything because last name Manning. but the high school he played for, that slips in my mind all of a sudden, but it's a lower level school in Louisiana. And so the competition isn't that of, say, a 5A here in South Carolina. It's different. And so there was a lot of, again, a lot of people were kind of saying, they wouldn't say it because, we don't want to offend. We don't want to offend the Manning family, right? No, we can't do that. They're royalty. Don't want them upset with us. They might want to do a commercial or make a TV show. And so it was kind of, let's not bring up the fact that Arch is playing against a lot of lesser competition. Now you get to college, and he was okay last year. He was fine in his 2 starts and, gave you hope that all right, he was everything that he was cracked up to be. But now we've watched him, and I watched probably more intently I've seen the Ohio State game for Texas, and I've seen I've watched some of the Florida game. And I say this because what I take away from that is, no, he's not ready for the NFL. That's what I take away. I'm not an NFL scout. But I think Ty brings up an interesting point. As I just mentioned, that last name, Manning, we're not going to offend them, right? We don't want to offend the Mannings. I don't want Eli or Peyton or Cooper, I guess, upset with us. So does he get drafted after the 5th round? Because if you compare the two, and that's what Ty brought up, Shedeur Sanders is having had a much better college career than what we've seen through Arch. Now, he's young. There's no need to hit the panic button yet. I don't see it this year. So what round would he go in? Well, I don't think he'd be drafted. I don't think he should be drafted. But don't we all kind of agree that some team out there is going to be like, all right, throw the Mannings a bone, pick Arch, if that is indeed the path he wants to go? I think that's going to be kind of the interesting thing with him there, is in terms of what happens with him. And again, Oklahoma this weekend for Texas, and that'll be a really fun game there in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, and will give us a little bit more clarity on where we're going with the SEC. The SEC, by the way, is just to me, it's a jumbled mess. And I was watching what is now the Big Ten Homer Show, and they're buying in, by the way, the Wake Up Barstool with Portnoy and that gang. And I liked them for clarity, for transparency. I like that group. But I was watching this morning, they were bringing up the topic of which conference this year is stronger. And their consensus was that the better teams, Oregon, Ohio State, are in the Big Ten, but the depth of the conference is the SEC. And, again, with Texas, you look at it now, they're not out of the playoff. They're definitely not out of the playoff race. I mean, just like South Carolina, just like Brad Crawford mentioned in the previous hour with South Carolina, you look at the schedule coming up and you look at the victories that could be had and the resume that could be built, and you go, okay, wow, all the goals. Brad said the same thing I said last week. All the goals, everything you wanted to accomplish is still on the table for the Gamecocks. That starts this week. But the same thing with Texas. Technically, same thing with Florida. Technically, the same exact thing with Florida. All the goals are on the table. So I'm interested to see where we go with the SEC. I'm interested to see what happens with Arch Manning. Shoot, I'm interested to see what happens with DJ Lagway. He bounced back this weekend. But Arch over the weekend, I watching that Florida game, the Ohio State game, I chalked it up. A road game against Ohio State. We all think Ohio State's top 2, top 3 team in the country. That defense is really good, so forth and so on. And all right, chalked it up to, hey, first start on the road, massive game. It is what it is. He'll get better. But now you look at the Florida game, and you still see him holding the ball too long. Took some massive shots. I mean, he got crumpled a couple times. And I think that's the biggest thing with Arch Manning is you don't see the development. 803-404-76 6100. Staying on a little bit, again, big picture college football and going back to a guy who has developed and talking about strength of teams in the SEC is Alabama and Ty Simpson. And I tell you what, Ty Simpson, I'm interested to see him on the 25th when he comes to Columbia. Some of the throws he's starting to make, the way he's developing, it's what college football used to be. A five-star recruit comes in, waits his time, waits 3 years, develops, improves himself, and then turns into a Heisman candidate, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And that's what you're seeing with Ty Simpson. And it's truthfully the exact opposite, as we're talking about this out loud, the exact opposite of what's happening with Arch Manning. But you look down the stretch here, and with Ty Simpson, that's going to be, in my opinion, and this counts Trinidad Chambliss and John Mateer if we get to see him. Ty Simpson's the best quarterback South Carolina sees over the remaining 7 games. I got a text in here. Trey says, rank the next 5 games from least to most difficult. Let's do throw Texas A&M in there. It's after the bye week. Here's how I do this. I look at partially when you play. South Carolina plays Texas A&M after a bye week. They're going to play Texas A&M. We already know the time. It's going to be noon or 12:45 for that Texas A&M game, which will be an 11 or 11:45 College Station. So while I think Texas A&M is really good, I would actually have that as the 5th most difficult game over the next 5 because, again, bye week for South Carolina, early kick out there in College Station kind of helps South Carolina a little bit more. I think Mississippi's the toughest. Trinidad Chambliss, Lane Kiffin. South Carolina's coming off of this 3-game gauntlet, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama. You'll go to Mississippi. I believe that is slated to be either a 3:30 or a night game, probably a night game, probably SEC Network. But that, to me, is the most difficult. Second on that is Alabama. I think Alabama is the second most difficult. Again, what I mentioned with Ty Simpson, I mentioned the way that team's coming along. They're starting to run the ball better. The defensive interior is getting better for Alabama. I think that's going to be the second most difficult. Third on that list from ranking the next 5 games would actually be LSU. Now, I think LSU of these 5 teams is the worst if we were to just rank teams, but playing in Death Valley at night, I've been there. It's a freaking war zone. They're going to have the tiger growling at, I think they still do that. They're going to have the tiger growling at people. Les Miles, of course, coined it as the place where dreams go to die. That's going to be really, really tough. So I'd have that 3rd, and I'd have Oklahoma 4th. We'll see what happens with John Mateer. I still think that sets up well for South Carolina because Oklahoma will be coming off of this Texas game, and who knows where they're at mentally and emotionally, depending on what happens this weekend. 803-404-6100. Again, how you can join us. Jamie Bradford set to join us in about an hour. But we'll come back, get into a few other topics from the weekend, and again, look ahead to that South Carolina LSU game. It is the halftime show.
All right, here for our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. How's your swing looking when it comes to your golf game? Well, if you're struggling with it, you can go by and get some help. They are offering free 30-minute swing evaluations where they will quite literally give you a blueprint of your swing with a couple pointers and drills to work on as well. And while you're there, you may as well take your opportunity to play on some of those Golf Zone simulators, too, where you can play on courses all over the world. You can rent by the hour. They have memberships available as well. They're also a tailor-made dealer where you can check out what they have to offer there and get club fittings as well. You can take in all this great stuff and book online at proswingcolumbia.com.
1:35 here as we roll along. We'll start to turn the page on the weekend that was tomorrow. Tyler will be back because he had an appointment today, and we'll get his thoughts and opinions on the weekend that was just an absolutely insane weekend. But for South Carolina and LSU, who was on a bye week, it's a monster game for different reasons, in my opinion, on Saturday night. And yesterday, Vegas opening up LSU is a 10 to 10.5 point favorite. Kind of depends on where you look, which site you go to, so forth and so on. But a 10 to 10.5 point favorite. And how does South Carolina respond? Now, you had the great momentum. You got momentum. Well, I say it's great. Anytime you win a game, I mean, look at this weekend. Look at this weekend. Anytime you win a game, it's great. And you celebrate it. And I think Shane Beamer's tried to point that out multiple times. Again, I'm pretty sure Texas and Penn State this weekend would have loved to be Florida State, would have loved to have been celebrating a victory. So anytime you win, you celebrate it, and you build off of that. And there were offensively some things that South Carolina could build off of. Defensively, as I mentioned, I think they're continuing to get better. Reminder, tomorrow, Shane Beamer will be back in action himself, 1 o'clock. The Shane Beamer press conference. We'll have it for you right here on 107.5, the game here in Columbia. So we'll get to hear from Coach. Doubt we'll get an injury update, but certainly you're expecting Judge Collier to be back and fully healthy this coming weekend, and that'll be big. That'll be a huge boost for the secondary. Brandon Cissay's played really well. Vakari Swain has had some nice moments. Peyton Williams and DQ Smith. Obviously, the tackling has got to continue to improve, especially this weekend. But the secondary has been stellar. It's been stellar. Maybe I would have expected them to be a little bit better, just a little bit better, because I thought that was going to be the strength of the defense. But you should get Judge Collier back this coming weekend for that. The guy that I think is most important is Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. We know LSU is going to line up and try and run the football in South Carolina this weekend. They are a big physical team, and they've struggled, much like South Carolina. LSU has struggled to generate a run game this past season. Now, what they do is they stick with the run game. They don't give up on it. They're going to stick with it, and then as they stick with it, they pop off a few runs here or there that go for some decent yardage, and it ends up making their rush totals look better. But Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy in the middle, maybe getting another week with Monkel Goodwine in there and continuing to develop that tandem is important for South Carolina, because I've kind of gone back on this. I think going back to the week after the Missouri game, maybe whatever it might have been. I like the development of Brownlow-Dindy and what he's bringing to the defensive line. I like overall the development of the defense and where they're going. You also had a bye week to maybe work on some fundamental things with Justin O, or with J.O., and along with Fred Johnson, and have them look at film from the first 5 games and say, here's a positive, but here's a negative. Here's what you got to do in this situation. I like where they're going with that defense, and I think this weekend, for South Carolina to win, based on what we know and what we've seen, it's going to be on the defense limiting LSU. Again, controlling that run game, tackling, getting guys to the ground, not giving up those missed tackles that South Carolina has unfortunately done very well in the last 3 weeks. But defensively, I expect South Carolina to make strides, not just over the next 4 games before the next bye week, but over the next 7 games. I think Clayton White does a great job. I think he's one thing that's a little underrated, I think, about Clayton White that I think he's done a good job with in-game adjustments. And when you come off of this bye week and you factor in that LSU is going to come in off of a bye week, I mean, it's not like South Carolina's got some kind of advantage here. LSU's had time to assess what they've done through the first part of the season. Whatever the situation is with Garrett Nussmeier, they've had time to assess that. They're getting their guys healthy. Their back is against the wall. But I expect the defense for South Carolina to take a step forward, and for Clayton White to be able to make some in-game adjustments. Key will be keeping those guys healthy, especially early on, because I really feel that this game, you watch that, whatever comes up on Saturday night. You watch the game early on. It's going to be a true SEC slobber knocker, if you will. It's going to be a physical football game. This is typically, and we're really now starting to have concrete data on Shane Beamer's teams. And by that, what I mean is not this particular team, but his program as a whole. When do they kind of turn a corner? The previous 4 years, it has been about this time that they start to really turn a corner and become a more physical football team. And I don't have an answer for that. I've talked about that a lot, really the last 2 years in the month of August, as it pertains to how South Carolina opens the season and how those opening games kind of go, where it seems like they get shoved around more than they shove around the opposition. But it's about this time that South Carolina tends to turn a corner each and every year, and that you see this team become more physical. Again, last year, you had this time is in between the Mississippi and the Alabama game. But you go back to what they did last year against Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa, and that offensive line had started to pick up a little bit. The defense had started to pick up. It kind of had transitioned from really kind of a shaky month of September to what they became starting in October. And so I put on Twitter over the weekend that I know this team will be prepared. I think they're going to go out very prepared. I think they're going to be more physical. I think that this will be the most physical game that we've seen South Carolina play, well, especially on the lines of scrimmage, through the first, what will now be 6 games, counting Saturday night. But I think this will be the most physical game that they play, and that kind of circles back to starting for me on the defensive line and limiting what LSU wants to do with that run game and forcing Garrett Nussmeier into beating South Carolina with his arm. He's fully capable of doing it, and he's got weapons at wide receiver. If he's become healthy and his wide receivers have developed a little chemistry over the last 2 weeks, yeah, he is fully capable of doing that, but we don't know exactly what his health is. And so, to me, again, getting a guy back like Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, having 2 weeks to develop and build the confidence of J.O. and Fred Johnson there at the linebacker position, getting a healthy Judge Collier back, that's pivotal for this defense, in my opinion, to take the steps forward that I expect them to starting this weekend and put South Carolina in a position to win. Look, Baton Rouge is a tough place to play. LSU is a really good football team. They are a super talented football team. Now, they are built on transfers again, so you do wonder mentally where that team is at, a bunch of one-year assassins. But LSU is a super talented team, but I expect this game to be within a score with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And South Carolina either having to get a stop to get the ball back, or South Carolina having the ball, much like the Missouri game, with a chance to go down and tie it up or even take the lead. But again, to me, it all starts defensively. And again, the guy that I point to that I'm most interested to see, probably on Wednesday night when the injury report comes out, is Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy and what exactly his health is. So we'll continue, obviously, to get into this again. Shane Beamer tomorrow, 1 o'clock. We'll have his press conference right here. I don't expect a injury report from him. He is now fully going with, hey, we put out an injury report on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. You guys follow that. But I will be interested to hear his assessment, his overall health assessment of his team. I do think he'll cover that tomorrow when he takes to the podium and lets us know if there's anybody that is of significant injury or something to keep an eye on. 803-404-6100. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 2. It is the Halftime Show. Wrapping up hour number 2. Reminder to you, the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest is back. And if Special Teams scores a touchdown, we've seen that a couple times this year, you could win $100. All you got to do is go to 1075thegame.com. The pot now at $400. Go to 1075thegame.com and get registered. It's the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest, and it's back. Again, we just need the special teams to score another touchdown, and you could win $100. Right now, you'd actually win $400. Just go to 1075thegame.com and get registered. 803-404-6100. Really good weekend for the Gamecocks. Mentioned, and I'll get back to the Spencer Rattler, Rico Dowdle, Devo Samuel. Also, shout out to Two Gloves, Tommy Gainey, friend of the show. Gets his first PGA Tour Champions title over the weekend. That's right. He wins the Constellation Furyk and Friends event. Pretty impressive, as he yesterday closed with a 6-under 66 for a 2-shot victory. What makes it even more impressive is old Tommy had to go through qualifying starting on Monday. So he goes from having to qualify to actually winning the tournament, and now he'll be exempt. He moved up to number 37 in the Charles Schwab Cup money rankings. They're on the senior tour, and is now exempt for several tournaments. And kudos to him, former Gamecock, doing something really great this weekend on the senior PGA Tour. Gainey was quoted as saying, "Man, a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I grinded for a long time, and finally, I can say that the grinding and hard work has paid off." So awesome for him. Congratulations, Tommy Gainey. And again, congratulations is a good weekend for the Gamecocks. And I mentioned Spencer Rattler. I don't know if people are paying attention. Rattler's, statistically speaking, having a good year. He gets his first victory yesterday over New York, over the Giants, 21-31, 225 yards, threw for a touchdown, had the 87-yard touchdown pass. He is completing 67% of his passes on the season, is Spencer Rattler. He, again, has thrown 6 touchdowns, 1 interception on the season, 990 yards, very solid. And yesterday after the game, here's Spencer talking about getting that first victory as a starter.
All right, how we doing?
How are you? Not as good as you.
Oh, much, feels good, man. Feels good to get that first win. It was a team win. Defense played great. O-line played elite today. I believe we had 0 sacks versus that front, so, that's a great building point, and, catch that momentum, go on a run, just keep working, keep progressing, and keep doing what we're doing.
So really good for him. I've said it. He came here to the University of South Carolina, represented the school, bought into the university, bought into the fan base. One of the crazier statistics there that South Carolina basically has had absolutely zero success at the quarterback position. And South Carolina's had good quarterbacks. It's not like over the last 30 years, South Carolina's been void of quarterbacks when you think about Dylan Thompson and Connor Shaw. I even throw Jake Bentley in there. Jake Bentley and, again, Dylan Thompson and Connor Shaw. And you go back, Blake Mitchell was solid. Steve Tannehill in the 90s. But that becoming South Carolina's had zero success outside of Anthony Wright with quarterbacks in the NFL. And, again, according to my research, Spencer Rattler getting the victory, we're claiming him as the South Carolina quarterback, is the first South Carolina quarterback to start and win a football game in the NFL since Anthony Wright did it in 2005 for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, next year, potentially, Spencer could be, he keeps playing like this. Maybe he's still latched on somewhere. Maybe he's still getting a chance to start. But next year, you could have 2 South Carolina quarterbacks in the NFL and starting if Lenora Sellers continues to get the praise and the hype that he has. And the Lenora Sellers thing, I'm interested to see how this plays out this month with the competition, because he's played fine. He's been fine. I don't know if he's been what we all hoped for and everything, but the intangibles and the arm strength and everything that is outside of, that is camp type stuff, that is combine type stuff, people are loving with Lenore Sellers, and it kind of doesn't appear that the actual results this year are hurting him at all. And again, it's not like he's played poorly, but very, very possible that next year South Carolina's got Spencer Rattler and Lenore Sellers playing quarterback in the league, and both could be starting, which, again, odd thing about South Carolina. Connor Shaw at least got a start for the Cleveland Browns back in the day, but it's been a very odd drought for the Gamecocks for a long time at the quarterback position in the NFL. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to Rico Dowdle as well for his performance. We'll come back. Jamie Bradford set to join us in the next hour. Hour 3 on the way. 2 o'clock on a Monday. Just speeding right through it. Be Tuesday before you know it. You can wrap things up today here in just a short while. Get home. We got Monday night football tonight. Actually, pretty good, pretty entertaining game. Jacksonville and Kansas City tonight. I always enjoy watching. We were just talking about South Carolina quarterbacks. I do actually enjoy watching Trevor Lawrence play, and tonight will be a good one for him for Jacksonville. That game down in Jacksonville as Kansas City comes to town. So you get Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence. The Chiefs favored by 3.5 tonight. Over under, for those of you interested, 45.5 according to ESPN Bet. Jacksonville playing better, I reckon, is how we can describe it. The Chiefs trying to kind of claw their way back after their start. But, you look at what Jacksonville is doing and why that game might be kind of entertaining with Trevor Lawrence. And, of course, obviously you got Travis Etienne as well. But Jacksonville 3-1 on the season, and they've won their last 2. So it should be a really fun one tonight. Starting at about 6 o'clock tonight, you got Major League Baseball taking place. And, again, over the weekend, Detroit and Seattle is a good series. I mean, there's no major rooting interest, if you will. Both organizations I got no problem with. There's a nostalgic affinity for Seattle. Maybe a lot of you about my age in your 40s kind of grew up with King Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson and Alex Rodriguez and that Seattle team, Edgar Martinez. They were out in the Kingdome, and that was kind of a fun baseball team to kind of follow, kind of a mystical team because of King Griffey Jr. and how good he was. And then you had Randy Johnson and all redheaded and 6'11", just mowing people down. Again, a really kind of fun baseball team to follow. But now they're back, led by Cal Raleigh, and that's been a good series. The first 2 games there, the first one going 11 innings on Saturday night, and then last night coming down to the final outs. So that one's been good. Can't say the same for the other ones. The Blue Jays just pillaging the Yankees. I mean, it has been an absolute nightmare for the Yankees, and I don't know if scoring runs late as they did yesterday will help them. Maybe, just maybe, the fact that they were able to put some runs up on the board late in that ball game yesterday maybe gives them a little confidence, maybe kind of changes the momentum. They were getting just blasted, but they scored 5 in the 7th to make the score look semi-reasonable, 13-7. Max Fried bopped around yesterday, gave up 7 earned runs in 3 innings and 8 hits. So the Blue Jays are absolutely tearing apart the Yankees, and they'll be back in action on Tuesday night. The Cubs and the Brewers later on tonight, we'll get to see them. The Brewers mauling the Cubs on Saturday as well. That one 9-3 there in Milwaukee. And, again, they're back in action tonight. They're the late game, 9:08 on TBS. The early game, again, the Dodgers and the Phillies tonight. Dodgers up 1-0 in that series as they will look to go up 2-0 and take that series back to L.A. So you got some baseball. By the way, if you're just marking your calendars, if you're just into this kind of thing, it's the beginning this week. The beginning of what, you ask? It's the beginning of midweek football. That's right, Wednesday night. How about this slate? Missouri State and Middle Tennessee on Wednesday night, and Liberty, watch Jamie Chadwell, and UTEP. So we start really ramping up the college football season this week when we get those midweek games, and it's Missouri State and Middle Tennessee on Wednesday, Liberty and UTEP. So you got Monday Night Football, you got Major League Baseball tonight, you got Major League Baseball tomorrow and tomorrow night, and then we get back to the college football on Wednesday night to go along with more Major League Baseball. So it's that time of year where everything's going great. And I'm not going to bore you with it unless I get bored and just decide that we need to discuss it. Tomorrow night, opening of NHL season. That's right. Get the boys back on the ice and let's get after it. NHL gets going tomorrow night as well, so we'll see how the Hurricanes do and see who, if anybody, can compete with the Oilers and the Panthers in the NHL. But NHL gets going. So the fall sporting extravaganza fully underway. NBA not far away as well for those of you that are into that. So college basketball, I know we had Jeff Goodman on last Thursday, and college basketball set to get going on November 4th. So we are fully invested in the sporting fall season, heading toward Thanksgiving and heading toward Christmas. But this past weekend, maybe we saw it coming. Maybe you could look at it a little bit. Maybe you could kind of just look at the schedule on Friday or Saturday morning and be like, we got some potential here. Now, nobody saw Penn State and UCLA and that game going the way it was. James Franklin, despite having all the answers, didn't see it. And Captain Dave, let's play this again. This is James Franklin trying to describe why his team lost to UCLA. Penn State was a 24.5-point favorite. They are considered one of the more dominant teams, even with that lost Oregon in the country. UCLA, not considered any of those things. But here's James Franklin after the 42-37 loss on Saturday afternoon, explaining what happened to his team.
Obviously, we did not handle last week's loss well. We also lost some players in that game during the week, and then everything else. The travel, everything else. Did not come out with the right energy to start the game. And before you know it, obviously they get a touchdown drive, an onside kick, and now you're fighting. They gain confidence, and we're fighting for the next 3 quarters. So that's my responsibility, and I didn't get it done.
Give him credit. He said it's his responsibility. He took the blame. He's the guy in charge. The buck stops with him. He makes the big money. But it does feel like he opened that with like, well, we lost last week. We got injuries and all that darn travel. We had to travel. That was the shocker of the weekend. Penn State goes out there. Now we'll see what Penn State's college football playoff hopes still become. They've still got several games to go. They could very easily fall out of this. The UCLA side of things, the cool story of that was Rick Neuheisel's son, Jerry Neuheisel, being promoted to offensive coordinator over last week, by the way. Not like at the beginning of the year, but last week. And he goes out and calls a heck of a game. Nico playing one of his better games as a quarterback, and all of it leads to UCLA bouncing back. 0-4 on the season, nobody going to the Rose Bowl, but there's UCLA winning football games. So you had that going. Then you had just kind of an interesting situation occurring down in the swamp, down in Gainesville. As we all kind of look at Texas now, we look at Arch Manning, and it feels like now it doesn't feel like, but that's who they are. That is, Texas is not a top 10 team. Arch Manning was not a Heisman candidate. This is a guy who needs a lot of development still. Could be a good quarterback. He's got plenty of time. Let's not write Arch Manning off just yet. Maybe Arch Manning comes up and ends up being a super success story, but he is not an elite quarterback at this point in time. Did not deserve that discussion at the beginning of the season. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, he got shoved down our throat. The hype was incessant. We got those, the eyeglasses commercial now. I think it was Warby Parker, I believe. You got that. And I get it. We get annoyed easily in this society, and the hype that he got certainly annoyed a lot of people. A lot of people wondering why he was getting so much and other players were not. But he's just an average quarterback right now. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are taking a lot of joy in that and a lot of pride in that. But Texas, not a top 10 team. Definitely not a preseason number one if you want to go down that path about preseason polls and what we do and don't know and why preseason polls are kind of meaningless and why they shouldn't be there. I still love preseason polls, but I do understand in this situation, yeah, everybody had it wrong on the Longhorns. So it was that game. Vanderbilt and Alabama, that was a fun game. That was a really actually fun game to watch. Ty Simpson's incredible. Diego Pavia's annoying and all that stuff, and he choked. He had the turnovers. He had the big fumble. They were going in. They're going to go up. Worst case, they're going to kick the field goal down there in the first half, and they're going to be up 10-0. Best case scenario, he runs it in for a touchdown, or they score, and they're up 14-0, and maybe it changes the dynamics of that game. But instead, he gets stripped down around the 8-yard line. Bama jumps on it, changes the dynamics of that game. They're able to go down and score and make it 7-7. Pavia would have they would also drive into the red zone later in that game, and he would have the interception, a bad interception at that, and kind of uncharacteristic for him. But again, I think that's something where a lot of people, much like they're joyous in what's happened to Arch Manning, they're joyous in seeing Diego Pavia choke and fall apart on Saturday in Tuscaloosa, and then probably joyous because he has aligned himself with the one and only Johnny Manziel, and there's also a video after the game of Pavia getting into it with some Alabama personnel. Not a very good look there. We'll see where the Commodores go from here. Look, like I've said with South Carolina, like I've said with Florida, with these all of Vanderbilt's goals are still right in front of them. They want to get to the college football playoff, they can still do it. You just got to kind of run the table, win some football games. Everything that Vanderbilt wants to do is still right in front of it, and it'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back. Now they face a little bit of adversity. If they can bounce back from a loss on Saturday. You also had just the situation in North Carolina. It's ugly. Clemson's not playing well, but Clemson goes up there and just does whatever they want. Clemson looked like the number one team in the country. North Carolina looked like a team made up of JV football players. It wasn't close. It was just the whole thing. It was bad. It's bad. It's bad up there. And I see people questioning, what does North Carolina do with Bill Belichick now? Do they cut ties? Do you allow this thing to play out? I think you got to let it play out. You got to give him time. I mean, this day and age, maybe he can get in the transfer portal. Maybe he sees things the way they are in college football now. Maybe he understands that the dynamics of what he wanted to do did not work at this level, and he's got to change up his philosophy. Or maybe Bill Belichick's looking around like, I kind of like the retired life, hanging out on the beach doing some kind of odd yoga with the girlfriend. It's that situation, and I don't know what North Carolina fans would prefer. Do you just cut bait and move on? You just say, hey, Bill, we appreciate your efforts here, but, man, it's not working, and you don't know what you're doing on this. I mean, they've been blown out by TCU, by Central Florida, and now by Clemson. They do have the wins over Charlotte and Richmond. Congratulations on that. But that scenario up there has turned into an absolute train wreck. And I think much like Arch Manning, much like Diego Pavia, it's one that a lot of people around the country are smiling and giggling and laughing at and taking some pride in the true fall of Bill Belichick and the North Carolina football program. 803-404-6100. We'll come back. We'll get into that, get back into South Carolina LSU. Jamie Bradford joins us next. It is the Halftime Show. 2:20 on a Monday. And join now, as he does each and every Monday, to recap a wild weekend and to maybe offer his assessment of Mark Sanchez, because at this point, why not? Welcome in, Jamie Bradford. What a weekend of college football.
Man, it was something, and it always happens like that when everybody writes it off. Oh, there's not a lot of good games this weekend. College football delivers every time somebody doubts them. So yeah, it was pretty enjoyable.
So what? I had Brad Crawford on earlier. I asked him as we are out of the month of September and really right around the halfway point of the season, what is your biggest surprise of the football season? Now, is it maybe the parity when you see number 1 Texas and number 2 Penn State with 2 losses? I'll throw it out there. Is it the hype for Arch Manning that he's not living up to? Is it Alabama bouncing back? What is Jamie Bradford's biggest surprise now as we really get into October?
Miami.
Okay.
I wasn't much of a believer in Carson Beck. I thought Carson Beck had kind of written himself off, and he has totally rejuvenated his career. They had to go through Notre Dame in week 1. Of course, you look at Notre Dame now, and maybe they're good in some people's eyes. Maybe they're not that good. But going into the opening weekend of the season, I think everybody thought they were good, and Miami wins that game, and then you see what they did to Florida, and then of course Florida State scored 16, 19 points or something like that in the fourth quarter the other day. But everybody always wants to proclaim the U is back, the U is back, the U is back when they win one big game, and then they never really never comes to fruition. So I think Miami is proving all the doubters wrong, and that's been the biggest story to me in the country.
I am of the opinion that we just have a lot of parity. You're right, Miami is really good. What stands out about them, those defensive ends? I know they talk about that offensive line. It might be, I know some people down at Miami have reported out that it might be the best offensive line they've ever had, which would be insane. But Miami, to me, is a sign, and it's a good sign. I'm not trying to put them down. We have a lot of parity in college football, and that might actually lead to a really fun college football playoff.
Well, I think that this is where it's been going, and this is the prime example of what college football was setting itself up for, Bill. I mean, for the last few years, we've looked at the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness and the impacts that it's had on the game. And now you look at the top 25. I don't know if the top 25 matters a ton. I mean, obviously in the preseason, it mattered based on name alone, essentially. But you got a bunch of teams that are kind of proving people wrong, and then you got a bunch of teams that are just that are no shows. I mean Clemson, Texas, and Penn State have one Power 4 win. And it's North Carolina. North Carolina is hot garbage. I mean, look what Georgia Tech's doing, right? I mean, look what Vanderbilt is doing. Look at obviously, you mentioned Miami. We've talked about Miami. Look at Texas Tech. That's probably the prime example of what money can buy. I mean, it's parity is certainly probably the word, but I think October is the most honest month of the year in college football. So we're gonna find out a lot from this basically going forward through the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've put out on Twitter, and I've said I know people don't like, I get it, the transfer portal and the NIL and all the things that really transpire between January and about mid-August with off-season college football. I do totally get that. It's not our father's college football. It's a new age. The product, in my opinion, and I think this weekend showed it, the product on the field that we enjoy each and every Saturday as good as it's ever been, Jamie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. And, I mean, it also, keep this in mind too. Like, it can change in a hurry. Like you talked about your dad's college football. Or our college football. We grew up on it too, sure. Bill. I do really, miss the old days where you kind of grow old with players, right? I mean, if you poll any college football audience from across the country and whoever they pull for, they can rattle off a bunch of their favorite players from over time, and generally those guys were in a uniform for 3 or 4 years, and that's just not the case. I mean, it's not the only case, but it's just not the widespread case anymore. But it also shows you, like, for instance, let's say things really go downhill for South Carolina this year. You're not waiting 3 or 4 years anymore to try to get the thing rebuilt. I mean, you can do it literally in one off season. And there's a bunch of cases like that across the country. So there's some good and there's some bad. But, I mean, from a competition standpoint, the 10,000-foot view, I think it's better for the sport that there's more names involved than there were in the last couple of years.
Jamie Bradford joining us as he does each and every Monday. So back to the SEC. If you were to do a power ranking right now.
Oh, God.
I mean, this league. Here's what I said, and I mentioned this. I was watching this morning. But the Barstool show that comes on FS1, and that's become a voice now for the Big Ten, which is fine. I'm not complaining about that. The SEC's got their own voices on the ESPN, and there's a developing story that I'm not going to go into right now about Paul Feinbaum. But the Dave Portnoy and his group were saying that the deeper league might be the SEC, but the tougher league, the team with the better teams. The better teams, Ohio State and Oregon, are in the Big Ten. You agree with that?
I don't know that I would disagree with that, but I would also say this. I think there are way more teams in the SEC that can beat you on any given Saturday. I mean, so, for instance, if Texas A&M and Oregon played this Saturday, I wouldn't write off the Aggies in that game. Or if Ole Miss played Ohio State or Georgia played Ohio State or something like that, I wouldn't write off any of the better teams in the SEC versus either of those teams. But from a power standpoint, if you're saying, well, which league has the 2 strongest teams in the country, then I would agree with them. I'd say that it's probably the Big Ten with those 2.
A&M is another one that's kind of crazy because, they're just going about doing their business, but they've got wins now over Auburn. I know that's not crazy, but the Mississippi State win's nice, and then, of course, that Notre Dame win. And A&M, this is why I like the Mike Elko hire, because he's not flashy. He's not going to be loud. He's not going to give you clips in press conferences. They're just going to play football and play defense.
Yeah, I mean, they do the little things well. I mean, and Marcel Reed is having a great year. I mean, he's kind of an undersold kid right now at the quarterback position across college football. But the more big games that they play in, and the more that he performs, the more that people are going to hear about him. Starting again with this coming weekend, they got Florida coming to town, but they got to go to Baton Rouge in a few weeks and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like, the same thing goes with South Carolina. Like, I know that there's probably a lot of Gamecock fans that would laugh at this, and I understand that based on their performance throughout the large portion of the season. But if Carolina's clicking and Lenore Sellers is clicking, there ain't many people that want to play them. I mean, that includes Oregon and Ohio State and anybody else out there. So I just think that the SEC, like, there are too many teams that can beat you on any given Saturday. Does that mean that they win a national championship? I don't know. I mean, the one thing that you can raise the flag for in this league is that you feel like whoever gets into the college football playoff is going to be well prepared to go through the playoff itself. I don't know if the same thing can be said for the Big Ten and other leagues.
Yeah, that was another point on that Wake Up Barstool, is that teams might be a little more conditioned or battle-hardened, if you will, to deal with college football playoff coming out of the SEC as opposed to the Big Ten. But the one that maybe we keep an eye on is Texas Tech. Is that the sleeper team? Obviously, Miami out of the ACC, but maybe Texas Tech out of the Big 12.
Yeah, but let me say this about Texas Tech though. They are full. They've got like 40 or 50 transfers, right? All right, those are teams that appear rock solid until they lose. And then, so how fragile are you when you've got, a bunch of freshmen and then over half your roster, they're transfers. So you got 60, 70% of your roster that is very new to that whole ordeal. How do they perform if they lose? Now, that's if they lose. I mean, find me a game on the rest of their schedule that they're going to lose or that they should lose. I mean, they could have some trouble at Arizona State maybe. I don't know how good is BYU, but they get that game at home. I mean, I don't know that they're going to lose But what type of locker room do you have when you have that many new faces? A lot of them just giving a lot of money to come there. Not a lot of people are just dying to go play football in Lubbock, Texas, as we all well know. So if things get rocky, how do they respond? And that's always a big question when you go heavy in the portal.
We'll turn our attention to South Carolina LSU. When we come back, he's Jamie Bradford. I'm Bill Gunner. It is the Halftime Show.
Tyler ahead here for our friends over at Tilly's Warehouse, first wine and spirits store in 5 Points in the past 20 years. I tell you about it all the time, and I'm always excited to remind you of everything they have to offer at the local family-owned and operated place. They've got the Garden Black vodka, which 25% of the proceeds go to the Garnet Trust, which benefits South Carolina athletics. They've got ready-to-drink things like High Noons and Sun Cruisers, either by the case or right there by the checkout register as well. They also have G4 Tequila. And if you're a local business in the area, they have a Class B license where they can sell to bars if you need to stock up there as well. Mention this ad on 107.5 The Game, and you can get 10% off any wine.
Saturday, October the 1st, Jamie Bradford. Saturday, October the 1st, 1994. South Carolina, led by Brad Scott, on a 3-game win streak over Arkansas, Louisiana Tech, and Kentucky, goes into Baton Rouge and knocks off the Tigers 18-17, and basically a monsoon. I remember that game. I remember being at one of my dad's really good friends and watching the game. I think back then, that was a pay-per-view game. Pay-per-view. I tell them how long it was. Saturday, October 1st, 1994. The Gamecocks would knock off LSU in Baton Rouge. Do you have a memory of that game?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, obviously it was pouring rain, and still one of my favorite catches in Carolina football history today happened in that game. Tannehill pump faked and threw it into the corner of the end zone with about 45 seconds to go in the game, in the first half. And remember, Toby Cates laying out for that touchdown. Yeah. Pretty incredible. What was scary at the time was, remember, the first touchdown, which was also a dandy of a play. Yeah. And if Shane Beamer's asking me, I'd like to maybe see that play recreated this week. The pitch to Stanley Pritchett, and then he threw it back to Blake Williamson in the end zone for the first touchdown. But remember, they fumbled the snap on the extra point, so they had to go for 2. And when they scored that second touchdown, and they didn't get it. So it was like, oh, my gosh. I remember being a kid watching that game. I remember my dad saying, no, this is going to bite us in the end. But it ended up not doing that, fortunately.
That is the last time South Carolina won. The only time. I shouldn't say the last time. The only time in Baton Rouge. And, Jamie, obviously a tall test. LSU's back is against the wall. They were a preseason national title contender, much like LSU. There was a lot of thought that game day would be here this weekend, that it would be a battle of the Heisman contenders, Lenora Sellers and Garrett Nussmeier, but here we are. And I said earlier, and I'll get your assessment of this, it is about this time over the last 4 years that we have started to see Shane Beamer's teams really become more physical and kind of change their identity through the season.
Yeah, I would say so, and I think that there were some things that they did in that last game that were moving them in that direction as well. I mean, obviously, they're going to have to be able to run the football much better. This is probably the best defense they've seen this year. LSU is really good, and offensively, they have the weapons over there, but how healthy are those weapons? Oblique injuries don't just disappear. And I don't know, man. I got a strange feeling that they're maybe preparing to get Michael Van Buren in the game a whole lot more than some people might think. Obviously, the Durham kid at tailback who had a pretty good game against Carolina last year, he's banged up too. But if Carolina just can continue to keep moving it in the right direction and limit the penalties like they did against the Wildcats, and obviously with Sellers' legs getting a little bit more involved, get those running backs to hit some of those holes and not miss some of them, and the offensive line to continue to kind of grind it out, get a little bit better, they've got a real chance to win this game. Like I hope people aren't writing this thing off as some loss because it's at night in Baton Rouge. Carolina matches up pretty well, and I think they're going to go down there and play well.
Do we see more Matthew Fuller at running back? Does Matthew Fuller? It feels like what we saw at the very end of the Kentucky game is Matthew Fuller and Rasul Faison becoming the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with the lack of push that they've received up front, I mean, he seems to be the guy who can at least move you forward a couple extra yards. He was pretty impressive in that final drive the other night. But I mean, look, I went back and watched that Kentucky game a couple of times, and I'm not a coach or anything, Bill. As you know, I'm kind of try to lean on the people that know more than I do, and I see what Shane Beamer and Coach Shula and Lenoris and these guys have often said, hey, we're not as far away as people think we are on offense. I mean, there were a few plays where running backs themselves just flat out just missed holes. I mean, you're talking 10, 15, 20-yard runs that were there. I mean, just wide open. You tack on 30 or 40 yards last weekend, you're rushing for over 200 yards, and you get a couple of big hitters, and people are raving about the run game going into the game this week. So I don't think they're that far off, and I think a few extra days probably allow them to maybe find a little bit of a rhythm. But I do think Matt Fuller should get some more reps. I think he will.
I've said that about the run game, and I know people get upset about we all want to just zero in and have tunnel vision and go, well, it's got to be the offensive line. The offensive line stinks, and they've got issues. Josiah Thompson is having an incredibly bad year to this point. But you just said something I've said. The running backs have not helped. There have been times that there have been holes, and they have simply not hit them.
100%. I mean, I think they would tell you that if you had a private conversation with them. I mean, you've got guys who've whipped on blocks. I mean, I'm not going to call out specific numbers, but they've all done it, and it's one guy here, one guy there, or whatever the case is. I mean, to your point, you're exactly right, and I agree. I've said the same thing. Has the offensive line been what we thought that they would be? I don't think they've been near close what we thought they would be. But have they been as bad as everybody has made them out to be? I don't believe that either. Now, they need to continue to get better. It's not like they're in a spot where we're okay here. No. They need to get better. But, other guys need to be able to do their jobs too. And, again, if you're if some of those big hitters aren't going to be there, the guy who can at least roll you forward for a couple of yards is probably going to be a dude who deserves a few more touches.
By and large, you and I are ultra positive guys. We will call it as we see it. But I have been ultra positive even after Missouri on the defense, because I thought going into the season, this defense, it would take these 5 games, that month of September, to continue to develop. Defense kept them in the game. They didn't tackle well. They're not tackle. I get that. But, Jamie, I spoke earlier on this program, getting Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy back, hopefully he's completely healthy, Judge Collier back that week to work with the young linebackers. I'm excited to see this defense, not just this week against LSU, but over the development of the next 7 games.
Man, I love this group. I've loved them since the preseason. The guys up front, I'm with you on that. It was a matter of making sure they're all healthy at one time and being able to kind of feel one another out there. And I really like where they are. I mean, this team's got 14 sacks as a group, and I think, I think maybe just one of those has come from anybody other than the guys that play up front on the edge or on the interior. So, yeah, I thought they took a major step in the right direction against Kentucky, and you can write that off as it just being Kentucky all you want. That's fine. But you could feel their momentum if you understand what I'm saying. I think they're in store. If they find a way to make LSU one-dimensional on Saturday night, Carolina's going to win the game. I'll flat out say that here on a Monday afternoon. If they find a way to make them one-dimensional, they will win the football game. And if they do that, it's going to be because of those dudes up front.
Well, the question, and we got about a minute left with you, what is that one dimension? Are you saying that they have to I said take away the run, that you got to make Garrett Nussmeier. Yeah. I mean, or is it you take away the pass and they've got to beat you with the run?
Yeah, I think you want to stop. I think you want to stop them on the ground. I mean, I think that's football 101, and I think that's exactly what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to stop them on the ground, and if he is healthy or Van Buren or whoever's in there, and they're able to beat you when you're out there on islands playing man coverage and things like that, you can tip your cap, and those guys are just better than your guys. But I don't think that they are. So I think that they're going to try to stop the run, and they're going to force LSU and whoever's at quarterback to throw it 35, 40 times if they can do it. And depending on how successful they are doing that, will probably end up determining the ball game.
Jamie, always appreciate it. It's going to be a fun week. Coming off of that weekend it was for college football, it gives us plenty. I know y'all got plenty to talk about on your shows. We got plenty here in a big week for South Carolina. Look forward to speaking with you again next Monday to look back at all of it.
Yeah, man. Hopefully it's a good Monday. I got a feeling it will be.
I'm going to hold you to that. Hold you to that next week.
See you, man.
Take care. Jamie Bradford joining us as he does. Follow him on Twitter if you're not already. Sports Media JB. A lot of great insights there. 803-404-6100. Anything you've heard you want to text in on, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, or just make a general comment. We always love to hear from you. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Captain David Ayer. It is the Halftime Show. Well, it appears a national nightmare is about to start here for the next little less than 24 hours. About an hour ago, LeBron James, that's right, LeBron James has put out a tweet. Now, I don't know what that seems to be. We don't know what this is about to be about. But LeBron James has put out a tweet, and it says essentially the decision of all decisions, October 7th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And then he got emojis. He's got a saluting emoji and a crown and a hashtag, the second decision. And it looks like this has been pre-filmed, so I don't know what that's about. I will admit my NBA paying attention brain is not on just yet, but I'm not real sure here what LeBron is about to go for, but I guess tomorrow will learn something. Yes, I'm not real sure. So I will keep an eye on this, and we'll have to all suffer through whatever is going on. But LeBron James putting out a tweet at about 1:53 here, so about an hour ago, and it shows, I guess, a guy interviewing him sitting in a chair. There's an empty chair, and then it's actually a video, and LeBron walks up to the chair and sits down. And again, LeBron has titled it "The Decision of All Decisions," October 7th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And it just says this, and then the video ends with the second decision coming soon. And I like LeBron. And I give LeBron a lot of credit in this day and age with cell phone cameras and with everything, for him to basically stay out of trouble, to be a true role model. Hey, he whines. Okay, flops a little bit. But I give LeBron credit for not doing something that you would be embarrassed to have your child wearing a LeBron jersey. But great. Now we got to wait this out. And this is probably going to be something like minuscule. I mean, he's been injured. He's been with the Lakers, so we know he's not going to another, to my knowledge. He's not pulling some kind of wild issue and going to another franchise. But we'll see what LeBron James has got in store for all of us good folk here tomorrow at noon. And again, a reminder, we'll see what that is, and if it's important or if it's just something random. Don't be surprised if it is just something random from LeBron. And then at 1 o'clock tomorrow, a reminder, Shane Beamer, he's back in action. That's right, the Shane Beamer press conference tomorrow, 1 o'clock right here on 107.5 The Game. We'll carry that for you, and we'll hear from Coach and what he feels was improved upon coming off of the bye week. And, there's a lot of areas this team can improve upon. But I'm with Jamie Bradford, as he was saying, Saturday's a winnable game. And now, would it also shock me if South Carolina goes down there and can't tackle, the offense can't move the ball, and they get their doors blown off by 3 touchdowns? I can't say that would surprise me. And that's going to be part of my kind of discussion all week long. I don't know what we are about to get on Saturday evening in Baton Rouge, in Death Valley, from South Carolina football. I do firmly believe that this is the time of year in which we have now seen a pattern where South Carolina and Shane Beamer's teams kind of turn a corner. They become more physical. They become a better football team. It was this time last year they went to Tuscaloosa and had every opportunity to win that football game and couldn't take advantage of it. You go back the last few years, it's been a time where they seem to kind of turn things around again, become a more physical football team. So do we get that? But I have no idea what we are going to see on Saturday night from this football team. They could come out and have made adjustments and all of a sudden be a totally different team and go down there and shock the Tigers. I mean, they're a 10.5-point favorite. Over-unders, by the way, like in the low 40s, which was kind of an odd number. But they could go down and shock, or I could see a scenario where LSU gets up. Garrett Nussmeier turns out he's completely healthy now. LSU's able to run the football. South Carolina can't run the football. LSU's defense is teeing off on Lenora Sellers, and it gets really ugly. So we'll discuss this throughout the week. But again, Shane Beamer tomorrow